Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of Editorial. Let me start my editorial with an apology. An apology because what I wanted to say yesterday and what I ended up saying and what I ended up communicating were two different things. I am referring to the origin of the word India. What came through is that India was designed, the word India was coined by British, which is not correct. So I want to apologize. So I'm going to talk to you about India, the word India, the origin of India once again, and I'm going to spend 4 or 5 minutes more. And now I also want to talk about what happens if we change our name and start calling ourselves Bharat. Let's understand what happens from a global perspective. That also I'm going to talk to you about. And my editorial today is about this RSS leader called Krishna Gopal, who on Sunday, that is 2 days back, said that restriction imposed on women in Indian society were due to Islamic invasion. This was what he said, and I want to discuss that. Let's get right into the show. Now, let me start from the beginning. So this time, let me get into the depth. The word India, like I said yesterday, comes from the word Sindhu. Sindhu river, when it reached the Persia and the Greek, the word passed on to Greeks were Hindu. So Sindhu became Hindu when it went to Greece. Now, Greece, H was silent in Greek and Persian. So, Hindu became Indu, and Indu went on to become India. This is the legacy. Now, India, therefore, is not a foreign name. It is an Indian name, originated from India, originated from the soil of this region, and it got metamorphosized into, Sindhu got metamorphosized into India. Now that's the way it is. Now what I said yesterday is also correct. You see, India interestingly had different regions would call us differently. Like I told you yesterday, Arabs and Mughals and all called us Hindustan. Greeks, I told you, couldn't pronounce the word H, so it became Indu and later on India. Chinese knew us as Tainzu. So Chinese called us Tainzu. So there was a lot of names that were used for India. But after the British propagated our name. British used India, called us India. So and globally, because of their relevance and their presence and their influence, they almost gave us the brand name India. So the whole world then started referring to us as India. This is what I told yesterday. But a few things that I didn't tell you yesterday, I told you today. So that's about India. Now let's keep that aside because that's old story, that is history, that is good for us to discuss. Now, why I said I want to talk to you a couple of more minutes today is because let me also tell you that if the name India is changed into Bharat, it is not just going to be a name change like a Prayagraj, like a Allahabad to Prayagraj, or like a Aurangabad to Sambhajinagar. It will not just be a name change anymore. It will not be a name change like a Bombay into a Mumbai. It will not be that simple. Because let me tell you from a branding perspective. You see, for a normal small company to change its name today will cost that company at least 2 to 3 crores of rupees. Processes, rebranding, reprinting, redesigning, it will cost that company 2 to 3 crore rupees. A mid-size company would cost at least 10 to 15 crores of rupees. A large company would cost at least 100 to 150 to 200 crores of rupees. And something like India, according to a report in Economic Times, based on our revenue receipts of 23.84 lakh crores of rupees, India may have to spend close to 14,034 crores. 14,000 crores to change the name from India to Bharat. 14,000 crores. You know, 14,000 crores is, if you have that money, you can pay for your Manrega workers, who most of them have not been paid for years. And if this government is just going to spend that kind of money for a feel-good factor, so that, you know, they can appease their voters, they can appease the majority. If that is why this government is going to do that purely as a feel-good factor, then I think the government is cheating this country out of that money. They're cheating this country out of that money. A. B. It's going to have large ramification, huge amount of confusion. A working brand, a good brand, a brand that is getting popular, you don't change the brand name when the brand is getting popular. Pepsi will not change the name because it's a market leading brand. Imagine an Apple tomorrow decided to call itself Orange. Wouldn't you say, you are foolish, Apple guys? Why are you changing such a brilliant brand name? Your brand is number one in the world. Normally, you will not end up doing that. Unless and until there is a very strong reason that you have to do it. Very, very strong reason that you have to do it. Changing the logo or making the logo modernized and all is okay. But changing the brand name doesn't happen. Does this government has that strong reason to change from India to Bharat? That's something that the people of India would want to ask the government. So that's the point I wanted to make. Now let's come to the topic of today's editorial. See, the topic that I'm going to discuss with you is not really about politics, or maybe not even seen as nationally relevant. But the topic that I'm going to discuss with you is important. Is important because misinformation now is forming the basis of our thought process. It is forming the basis of our society and our politics. Misinformation. Kerala story. Some other story. You know, that is becoming our narrative and people are buying it. And the fact is, the story I am going to narrate to you today is important because somewhere down the line, I think it is my responsibility as an Indian to also bust this kind of myths. And to question people who sit and who claim to be an authority on the subject and talk about things. And that's why I am doing this topic. You see, there's a gentleman called Krishna Gopal in RSS. He's a very senior leader of RSS. And according to an Indian Express report, he said, like I told you before, restriction imposed on women in Indian society were due to Islamic invasion. This is what he says, clearly. Like people say, Hindu khatre mein, he said everything that's going wrong with women, all thanks to Islamic invasion. He went on to say that practices such as child marriage, sati, illiteracy among women crept into Indian society because of Islamic invasion. Temples were demolished, big universities were destroyed, and women were in danger. This is what he said. Lakhs of women were abducted and sold in international market. Okay, women were reasonably free and contributed significantly to Indian society before the 12th century. So these are a lot. He said a lot of things, most of them the same thing again and again, but this is what he broadly said. So he said everything that went wrong with women, went wrong because of Islamic invasion, because of Mughal invasion. Now, before I talk about this in a little more depth, let me also tell you what the same man said in the same breath, okay, about women, and I will then come to my part of the analysis. He says that he cautioned Indian women. Yeah, I don't see a reason why all of these so-called guardians of Indian culture, Hindu culture, has this thing about women. The first thing they want to caution is women. I don't know why this fetish of cautioning women. Okay, so he cautioned women, saying that Indian women must go against Western culture. So he cautioned Indian women against Western culture, influence, and exhorted them to remember Indian values and pass those to their children. Men, chalega Western culture, I guess. Women should not get influenced by Western culture, Baba. Men, it's very, very Indian culture. They should formulate and they should pass it to their children. Men are okay. Men can do whatever they want. I'll tell you something further. He says, Women must imbibe these values in their children, like I told you. He also said that taking care of the family and managing the kitchen at home was as important as becoming a scientist or excelling in any other field. So the moment I think this the moment this ideology thinks of women, the first thing that comes to mind is kitchen. The first thing that comes to mind is rearing children. The first thing that comes to mind is culture, which could be wearing a sari and sitting at home. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The same person who said that everything wrong against women was done by Islamic invasion, he says that, you see, it is as important that your housewife is as important as a scientist. I do not disagree to that. Everybody is important. Everybody plays their own role. But the fact remains that, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? Would he say that a house husband is as important as a scientist or a doctor or an engineer? Why doesn't he say that in the same breath? I am saying housewife is as important as a scientist, so is a house husband is as important as a scientist. So if a housewife is sitting at home and the husband is working and becoming a scientist or whoever, the housewife is equally important. But if a husband is sitting at home and the wife is a scientist, that is equally important and the same. No difference. There is no difference. But why is the house husband not mentioned? And he says that all wrong that happened to women happened because of Islamic invasion. Now let me go further. He says that Chairperson Sudha Murthy, Infosys Foundation Chairperson Sudha Murthy, now she seems to be the new poster person. So Chairperson Sudha Murthy, Gopal said, she packs her food and carries it when she travels abroad. She runs Infosys today. Women ask, is cooking your job? By cooking, children stay with you. They feel loved. Is it something big if she packs her food and takes? And if a woman can pack her food and take, why don't you say that the man also should pack his food and take? See, look at the typical definition of women. And this is the same man who is blaming Islamic invasion. Now you decide. This is why I did this editorial. You decide as to whether it is Islamic invasion that got us this mindset, or did we have this mindset already? My question to RSS and people like Gopal Krishna who represent RSS, my question to them is, do you respect women? If you respect women, what was RSS and their entire cadre doing when that Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh is walking free in Uttar Pradesh? He is walking free in Uttar Pradesh. He is allegedly sexually assaulted women in when he was in power. He used his power to sexually assault women. What did you do for that? Did you create some kind of did you or your cultural organization create some kind of a resistance to that? Did you ever speak against that? This is your respect for women. Those two women in Manipur were paraded naked. Did you speak against it? Did you ask your government, what the hell is going on here? Why were those women paraded naked? Is this Hindu culture that you are professing? Mughals came, Mughals went. No, they've gone. That is all done. It's all over. Now, what are we talking about? Did you ask as to why those women were paraded naked? Why those women who were raped, why are those rapists still out? Have you asked that? Did you go in some forum and make a statement? That's okay, isn't it? Bilkis Bano, her rapists were let free. Did RSS say that, we are Hindus? For us, women, whichever caste, creed, community, doesn't matter. A woman is a woman. We respect her. We see her as Devi. Did you say that? Did you say that Bilkis Bano's rapist should not have been left free? We should catch him and put him behind bars once again. Did you tell this to your government? No. Who are you going to blame? The Islamic invasion for this? You see, this entire point about wanting something and saying something. Your narrative being one and your action being another. This entire thing has been happening far too often and far too many times. This is not the Hindu I am. And this is not the Hindu I want to be. This is not Hindu at all. So stop creating enemies for Hinduism. Stop creating enemies for Hinduism. And it is time Hindus realize this, and that's why my editorial. It is time Hindu realizes it. Stop creating enemies for Hinduism. Our society is our problem. We need to correct it. If we think right, our society will think right. And the day the women in our society are safe, that is the day you can sit back and say that we belong to a rich and cultured society. Till I see you next time. Namaskar.